Look, I need to be straight with you about something before we go any further. The Cleveland Browns quarterback situation has become the absolute laughing stock of the NFL, and honestly, I'm tired of pretending like this isn't the most predictable disaster we've seen in years. When you have a coaching staff that refuses to admit they made a mistake, you get exactly what Cleveland is dealing with right now. Complete and utter chaos at the most important position in football. But here's what really gets me fired up. This isn't just about one bad game or even four bad games. This is about an organization that has systematically failed to evaluate quarterback talent for decades, and they're doing it again right in front of our eyes. The difference this time is that everyone, and I mean everyone outside of that building, saw this coming from a mile away. Dillon Gabriel has now started 4 games for the Cleveland Browns, and the numbers tell a story that's somehow even worse than what we're seeing on the field. Completing less than 60% of your passes while averaging barely over 170 yards per game is backup quarterback territory at best. We're talking about production that would get you benched on half the teams in this league. But what makes this situation so incredibly frustrating is that Cleveland had an alternative sitting right there on the bench, and they refused to even consider it. The completion percentage tells you everything you need to know about what's happening in Cleveland. Gabriel is sitting at 59.4%, which sounds somewhat respectable until you realize that Joe Flacco, the guy they literally gave up on after 4 games, was completing passes at basically the same rate, except Flacco was actually pushing the ball downfield and giving his receivers chances to make plays. Gabriel is doing none of that. He's checking down, he's playing scared, and he's killing any chance this offense has of being remotely explosive. When you break down the film, and I've watched every snap of Gabriel's starts multiple times now, you start to see patterns that are absolutely terrifying for a quarterback at this level. Against New England, which was supposed to be a get-right game against one of the worst defenses in football, Gabriel completed 21 passes. 5 of those completions were behind the line of scrimmage. Let that sink in for a second. Nearly 25% of his completions gained 0 or negative yards. 14 more completions stayed within 10 yards of the line of scrimmage. That means out of 35 pass attempts, Gabriel only threw the ball more than 10 yards downfield 3 times. 3 times in 35 attempts. The most damning stat from that game is that Gabriel attempted exactly 1 pass that traveled more than 20 yards in the air. 1 deep shot in an entire football game where your team is playing from behind and desperately needs explosive plays to get back in it. That's not a quarterback playing within the system. That's a quarterback who has 0 confidence in his ability to make NFL throws. And worse, it's a coaching staff that has 0 confidence in their quarterback to execute their offensive game plan. Now let's talk about what happened on the field against New England, because the tape doesn't lie. There's a play in the second half that perfectly encapsulates everything wrong with Gabriel's game. Cleveland faces 3rd and 7 from their own 33-yard line. They're down 9 points, so this is a crucial conversion opportunity. New England comes out in nickel with 7 guys in the box because they know it's a passing down and they're gonna bring pressure. This is basic NFL football. Every quarterback in the league should recognize this defensive look and either check the protection or get the ball out quickly to an underneath route. Gabriel does neither. The protection actually holds up pretty well, which makes what happens next even more inexcusable. He looks off his first read, which is fine. Quarterbacks do that all the time. Then he immediately shifts his eyes to David Njoku running a slant route that would have picked up the first down. Here's where it gets ugly. Robert Spillane, the Patriots safety, is sitting right in the throwing lane. Not kind of in the throwing lane. Directly in the throwing lane. There is no window to throw through. None. But Gabriel throws it anyway, and Spillane intercepts it and returns it all the way to the 6-yard line, setting up an easy Patriots touchdown. I've watched this play probably 20 times trying to figure out what Gabriel possibly could have been thinking. Did he not see Spillane? Did he think he could somehow thread a needle that didn't exist? Was he so panicked by the pressure that he just made a terrible decision? Whatever the answer is, it's unacceptable for an NFL quarterback. Even if he throws the ball away there, Cleveland punts and pins New England deep. Instead, he gift wraps 7 points for the Patriots and basically ends any chance of a comeback. The very next drive, Gabriel does something that's somehow even worse. 1st and 10 from their own 24. Cleveland needs a good drive here to have any shot at getting back in the game. Ball snaps, and Gabriel immediately rolls out to his left for absolutely no reason. There's no pressure forcing him out of the pocket. His line is holding up fine, but he rolls left anyway, which eliminates 40% of the field and allows the Patriots secondary to cheat toward that side. Now Gabriel has already made his job exponentially harder, and the play hasn't even developed yet. But here's the kicker. He doesn't go through his progressions. He doesn't scan the field. He stares down one receiver the entire time, rolls to his spot, and just launches the ball downfield into double coverage. Not kind of double coverage. His guy is bracketed by 2 defenders, and he's not even open against the guy who's manned up on him. Gabriel throws it anyway, and shock of all shocks, it gets intercepted again. That's 2 picks and 2 drives on completely unforced errors that any competent quarterback avoids without thinking. The final play I need to talk about is genuinely one of the most baffling things I've ever seen in professional football. 2nd and 9 from Cleveland's own 2-yard line. Gabriel is backed up against his own goal line, which means the #1 priority is protecting the football and just getting some breathing room. New England brings a 6-man pressure, and Gabriel has time in the pocket. Not a ton of time, but enough time to make a play. Instead, he throws the ball to absolutely nobody, resulting in an intentional grounding call in the end zone for a safety. When you watch the all-22 angle of this play, it gets even worse. Gabriel has a tight end running a route that comes open before his second cut. If Gabriel hits him when his eyes are on the ball, it's an easy 1st down and Cleveland is out of the shadow of their own goalposts. Instead, Gabriel panics, throws it to nobody, and gives New England 2 free points. I cannot emphasize enough how inexcusable this is. This is the kind of mistake you see from a rookie in his first start, not a guy who's now 4 games into his starting career. After all of this, after the interceptions and the safety and the complete inability to push the ball downfield, reporters asked Kevin Stefanski if he would consider giving Shedeur Sanders an opportunity to play. His response was basically that his focus is on where they are right now, and Shedeur isn't part of that focus. I almost couldn't believe what I was hearing. Your starting quarterback just had one of the worst performances of the season against a bottom-tier defense, and you're not even willing to consider the alternative. That's not loyalty, that's stubbornness, that's ego getting in the way of doing what's best for the team. The Shedeur Sanders situation makes this even more frustrating. Everyone who watched the preseason saw that Shedeur looked better than Gabriel. It wasn't close. Shedeur was making throws that Gabriel simply cannot make. He was processing the field faster, he was more decisive with the football, and he showed the kind of arm talent that translates to the NFL level. But Cleveland refused to start him because they were committed to Gabriel as their 3rd round pick. Except Gabriel wasn't even a 3rd round pick that the current regime was in love with. He was a project quarterback that they thought they could develop over time. Well, guess what? He's not developing. He's regressing. Every game he starts, he looks worse than the previous one. At what point do you cut your losses and see what you have with the guy who actually has legitimate NFL upside? The Browns' offense has become completely one-dimensional because opposing defenses have zero respect for Gabriel's ability to beat them through the air. They're loading the box against Nick Chubb and daring Gabriel to make throws downfield. He can't do it, or won't do it. Either way, the result is the same. Cleveland's offense is stuck in quicksand, and it's dragging the entire team down with it. What makes this situation so maddening is that we're not even asking Gabriel to be Patrick Mahomes or Josh Allen. We're asking him to complete passes beyond 10 yards occasionally. We're asking him to not throw the ball directly to defenders when he has time in the pocket. We're asking him to not commit intentional grounding in his own end zone. These are baseline NFL quarterback requirements, and he's failing at all of them. The real question is how long Cleveland can continue to trot Gabriel out there before they're forced to make a change. Right now, they're 2-6 with their season basically over before Thanksgiving. The playoffs are a pipe dream. The division is out of reach. So what exactly are they accomplishing by sticking with a quarterback who clearly isn't the answer? Are they trying to prove a point? Are they too proud to admit they were wrong about the quarterback evaluation? Because from the outside, it looks like a coaching staff that's more concerned with being right than with winning football games. If I'm a Browns fan, which thank God I'm not, I'm absolutely furious right now. You've watched your team cycle through quarterbacks for 2 decades. You finally thought you had some stability at the the position, and now you're watching a third-round pick get exposed on national television every single week while the guy who should be playing sits on the bench. It's torture. It's cruel and unusual punishment for a fan base that's already suffered more than any fan base should have to suffer. The offensive line is doing their job. The running backs are producing when they get opportunities. The defense, while not great, is keeping games competitive enough that the offense should be able to move the ball. But Gabriel is the bottleneck. He's the limiting factor. He's the reason this offense looks like something out of the 1980s instead of a modern NFL attack. When your quarterback refuses to push the ball vertically, everything condenses, running lanes disappear, and the entire offense becomes predictable and easy to defend. I've heard from people around the league who are absolutely baffled that Cleveland hasn't made a switch at quarterback yet. Coaches, scouts, executives, they're all asking the same question. What are the Browns waiting for? The season is lost. Gabriel has shown conclusively that he's not a starting caliber quarterback in this league. Shedeur Sanders is sitting there ready to play. Why not see what you have? Why not give yourself a chance to evaluate whether Shedeur can be the guy moving forward? What possible reason could there be to continue starting Gabriel at this point? The only explanation that makes any sense is that the coaching staff tied themselves to Gabriel, and now they're going down with the ship rather than admitting they made a mistake. It's the sunk cost fallacy playing out in real time. They invested a third-round pick in Gabriel, they named him the starter, and now they feel like they have to ride it out no matter how bad it gets. That's not sound football strategy. That's emotional decision-making disguised as loyalty and patience. When you watch Gabriel play, you don't see a quarterback who's growing or learning or getting more comfortable. You see a quarterback who's scared to make mistakes, scared to push the ball downfield, scared to trust his arm, and that fear is paralyzing him and the entire offense. You cannot win in the NFL with a quarterback who plays scared. The league is too fast, the windows are too tight, and the defenses are too good. You need a quarterback who has confidence and swagger and believes he can make any throw on the field. Shedeur Sanders has that confidence. You can see it in the way he carries himself, the way he processes information, the way he attacks defenses. Is he perfect? Absolutely not. Will he make mistakes? Of course he will, but at least he'd give the Browns offense a pulse. At least he'd force defenses to respect the vertical passing game. At least he'd give fans something to be excited about in what's already a lost season. The comparison between Gabriel and Joe Flacco is particularly damning when you really dig into it. Flacco completed a lower percentage of his passes, but threw for significantly more yards because he was actually willing to attack downfield. The Browns decided Flacco wasn't the answer after 4 games and moved on. Gabriel has now had 4 games and has been demonstrably worse, yet the coaching staff is committed to him for reasons that make zero sense to anyone outside the building. Kevin Stefanski is running out of time and goodwill in Cleveland. The quarterback situation is a disaster of his own making. He chose Gabriel over Shedeur. He's stubbornly sticking with Gabriel despite overwhelming evidence that it's not working. And unless something changes dramatically after the bye week, he's going to continue to march out there with a quarterback who has no business starting in the NFL. At some point, the front office or the ownership is going to step in and force a change. The question is whether that happens before or after Stefanski loses his job. This is the Cleveland Browns in a nutshell. Dysfunction, poor decision-making, and an unwillingness to admit mistakes until it's too late. They had a chance to get the quarterback position right this season. They had options. They had talent on the roster. They chose wrong, and now they're paying the price with another lost season and another year of wasted potential. It's the same story we've seen play out in Cleveland for 20 years, just with different names and faces. The most frustrating part is that this didn't have to happen. Everyone outside the organization saw this coming. The warning signs were there throughout the preseason and training camp, but Cleveland ignored them, doubled down on their guy, and now they're stuck in quicksand watching their season slip away one incompetent Gabriel performance at a time. It's maddening to watch as a fan of football, and I can't imagine how Browns fans feel watching it happen to their team yet again.